What goes up a tree must evolve the ability to climb down. In a study of chimpanzee and monkey anatomy, primate arms provide hints about how our ancestors got to the ground in one piece. Millions of years ago, a simian ancestor of humanity decided to climb a tree. It may have been looking for a meal, escaping a predator, or seeking a shady place to rest. Later, like anyone who has ascended high into a forest's canopy, our relative discovered that getting down in one piece is less simple than it seems. Although that ancestral primate must have solved the problem, scientists have a lot of work to do in understanding how what went up first managed to come down, and how it relates to the evolution of our species. Everyone focuses on climbing up, because that's a difficult thing to do. Any human can relate to this, like climbing up a fireman's pole, for example, is challenging, said Nathaniel Dominy, an evolutionary biologist at Dartmouth. No one bothered to study climbing down, because gravity doesn't care whether you're climbing up or down. In a study published Wednesday in the journal Royal Society Open Science, Dr. Dominy and colleagues found that apes and our ancient human ancestors probably developed flexible shoulder and elbow joints to counteract the effects of gravity on their larger bodies, a sort of braking system to finally control their descent from trees. The researchers posit that this adaptation persisted even as early humans swapped out trees for grassland habitats, their versatile upper limbs now making it possible to forage, hunt and defend. The finding may shed light on the incremental steps in evolution that led to human ancestors walking upright, freeing hands for crafting and carrying tools. A key insight came from Mary Joy, a co-author of the study and at the time a Dartmouth undergraduate. She had been watching videos of chimpanzees, which are humans' closest living relatives, and sooty monkeys, an old world monkey native to West and Central Africa. The footage had been collected by two other authors of the study, Luke Fannin, a graduate student, and Jeremy D. Silva, a paleoanthropology professor at Dartmouth. Ms. Joy noticed that both animals climbed up trees with the same effort. The downward climb, however, was different. Employing software typically used to analyze the movements of human athletes, Ms. Joy saw that when chimpanzees climbed down a tree, they extended their shoulders and elbows above their heads to a far greater degree than the smaller monkeys. Compared to the sooty monkeys, the chimps flexed their shoulders about 14 degrees more, and extended their elbows about 34 degrees more when climbing down, versus up, a tree. The monkeys had a sort of similar motion to how they climbed up, a pretty angled way to hold their arms, Ms. Joy said. For the chimps, it was like they were in a controlled fall, while also using a full range of motion to go as quickly as possible. This freer range of motion matched what scientists already know about the anatomical variations between chimpanzees and monkeys, something the researchers double-checked by looking at skeletal samples. Apes, Dr. D. Silva explained, have shoulder joints shaped roughly like a ball and socket, compared to the more pear-shaped joints in monkeys. Additionally, elbow joints in apes open more widely. Together, these things allow a greater range of motion. Humans bear similar shoulder and elbow anatomies to chimps, Dr. D. Silva said, as did ancient hominins like Ardipithecus and Australopithecus. Dr. Dominy estimates the emergence of this adaptation to 15 to 20 million years ago. Susan Larson, a professor of anatomical sciences at Stony Brook University in New York, who was not involved in the study, likened the new findings to a missing puzzle piece scientists have sought tirelessly, offering critical insight into the hominid evolution from trees to land. Climbing up and down trees is very important if you're going to escape predators and exploit resources, Dr. Larson said. I think it does give us a way of thinking about why early humans would retain these features for a long time, until they sort of abandoned trees and became bipedal hunters. The researchers hope to corroborate their findings in other, larger, simians. There are large monkeys like mandrills and baboons that will climb trees occasionally, Dr. Dominy said. It would be nice to see how bigger monkeys handle down climbing. The forelimbs of hominoid primates, apes, are decidedly more flexible than those of monkeys, especially at the shoulder, elbow and wrist joints. It is tempting to link the greater mobility of these joints to the functional demands of vertical climbing and below-branch suspension, but field-based kinematic studies have found few differences between chimpanzees and monkeys when comparing forelimb excursion angles during vertical ascent, upclimbing. There is, however, a strong theoretical argument for focusing instead on vertical descent, downclimbing, which motivated us to quantify the effects of climbing directionality on the forelimb kinematics of wild chimpanzees, pantroglodytes, and pseudomongibs, Chercocibus atus. We found that the shoulders and elbows of chimpanzees and pseudomongibs subtended larger joint angles during bouts of downclimbing, and that the magnitude of this difference was greatest among chimpanzees. Our results cast new light on the functional importance of downclimbing, while also burnishing functional hypotheses that emphasize the role of vertical climbing during the evolution of apes, including the human lineage. Vertical climbing, defined as the ascent or descent of substrates angled greater than 45 to the horizontal plane, is a widespread behavior across animal forms, including invertebrates, squamates and mammals. Strongly associated with arboreal life, vertical climbing animals must resist downward slips and the pull of gravity, as falling can result in serious injury, death or predation. It follows that natural selection has favored anatomical or behavioral traits to mitigate slippage, either by means of claws, surface adhesion or friction. But with few exceptions, primates are devoid of claws or adhesive capabilities, relying instead on the normal forces generated by their limbs to produce friction grips. Vertical climbing is a conspicuous and essential behavior of hominoid primates, including all great apes and some human populations. The large body size of most apes, relative to monkeys and other primates, is expected to substantially increase the energetic costs of vertical climbing and risk of falling, and it is long hypothesized that the morphologies of hominoid shoulders and elbows evolved to mitigate these twin challenges. The retention of these same forelimb traits across early hominin taxa is another topic of enduring debate, in part because it suggests that vertical climbing was an essential predaptation for obligate bipedalism, but c. These discussions have focused almost exclusively on vertical ascent and the functional complexes that reduce the downward torque of gravity by positioning the center of mass closer to a given support. For instance, extreme dorsiflexion of the ankle common during chimpanzee ascension is predicted to improve pedal friction by forcing the forelimbs to subtend large angles, enhancing stability during upward propulsion. Captive apes affirm this expectation, exhibiting high degrees of shoulder flexion and elbow extension when climbing flexible ropes, yet wild chimpanzees rarely achieve the same joint angles when ascending trees, exhibiting monkey-like forelimb kinematics instead. Given these contradictory patterns, some scholars have shifted their attention to postural behaviors, suggesting that the highly mobile forelimbs of apes evolved primarily in response to below-branch, arm-hanging suspensory activities. All but ignored in this debate is the challenge of reverse, caudal first, descent, hereafter, downclimbing. The reason is simple enough: gravitational forces are indifferent to the direction of climbing, but even so, only downclimbing requires controlled braking to counteract gravitational or passive acceleration, i.e., eccentric muscular contractions to control the reduction of potential energy and corresponding increases in kinetic energy. Studies of chameleons, tamarins and humans have shown that steeper arboreal declines reduce vertical force production by the lower positioned limbs. Consequently, greater support and braking from the higher positioned limbs may be needed to control descent safely. Downclimbing, then, is expected to increase external loading by the forelimbs on the vertical substrate, which would generate braking impulse via increasing friction. Improve mediolateral stability, and reduce downward toppling moments that compromise safety. To exert elevated forces on the vertical substrate, it follows that the shoulders and elbows of primates will subtend larger joint angles during downclimbing, and that the magnitude of this difference will be greatest at larger body sizes. Thus, differences in 4L mobility between monkeys and larger-bodied apes are more likely to manifest themselves most strongly during downclimbing. Here, we test this hypothesis by comparing the upper limb kinematics of wild chimpanzees and a species of cercopithecid monkey during vertical climbing. We observed chimpanzees, Pantroglodytes schweinfurthi, Gogo community in Kibale National Park, Uganda during 2 3-week periods in June 2006 and July-August 2007. And we observed Pseudomongibs, Cercocibus aetus, in the primary study grid of the Ta Monkey Project in Ta National Park, CTDIVR for 2 month spans, August-September 2019 and January-March 2022. Defined as a montane or lowland rainforest, respectively, the sites have similar densities of canopy-level trees.